Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time I'll be answering two questions, starting with this one from Filmmaker7 who asked, "Hey Thor, what is your breaking point with Star Wars? What is the final straw at which point you decide, I watch a particular show or movie, read a book or comic, and hold on to the good that came before?" Maybe you never have that, but for me, the further they keep getting away from George Lucas, the less Star Wars this franchise becomes. Not to mention with the comments of the showrunner, who was Harvey Weinstein's personal assistant, I will not watch this show in any form. I'll just go into hiding until I see the ship turn around, if it ever does. Alright, so I have kinda answered this question before, or talked about all this before, but there are a couple different aspects to the question for me. The first of which is, there has been good Disney Star Wars, even some really, really good Disney Star Wars. Rogue One and Andor are two things that immediately come to mind as something I thoroughly enjoyed. But things like Rebels, Bad Batch, the first two seasons of The Mandalorian, probably some other stuff I'm not thinking of right now, as well as some of the books and comics and some great games as well, like Fallen Order and Survivor, they've all been good and kept me vested. And as I've said before, Disney is batting maybe around 500 with Star Wars. It just so happens that the stuff they really need to get right, that needs to be good because it deals with, shall we say, the more important aspects of the story or important characters, that's the stuff they tend to screw up, like the Kenobi series or the sequel trilogy, for example. But here's the thing, I don't think of Disney Star Wars as the same thing as George Lucas Star Wars. It's not the same thing he created. They are two separate entities. I've long since separated and compartmentalized them in my head as something completely different from each other. I even did that in a way with the expanded universe. I don't exactly see that as one and the same as George Lucas Star Wars, though I don't mean that in any sort of negative way or to detract from what it was. Because with the expanded universe, the intent was always there to honor Star Wars first, to try and expand on what Lucas had done in new and interesting ways that he, quite frankly, didn't have time for, but new fans wanted. He has said multiple times he understands the desire for Star Wars exceeded his ability to output. And some of those things it expanded on, or some of the stories it told, were not always liked by me or agreed with by me, and I didn't always think it gelled well with not only what Lucas had done, but with other stories or other writers or what they had done in the expanded universe. However, I was more or less okay with that, or found that less frustrating than what Disney sometimes does, because again, I knew or could just feel from reading it how much these writers genuinely cared about and loved Star Wars and wanted to explore it and expand it for the sake of Star Wars and its fans, not for any other personal motivation or agenda. I mean, sometimes with Disney Star Wars, whether you're reading it or watching it or just listening to or reading interviews with those involved with it, you get this feeling like they have this level of contempt for it. And they're not adding or changing things out of love of Star Wars. They're doing it because they feel there's something inherently wrong with Star Wars, the Star Wars that George Lucas created, that needs to be fixed, and that they're the ones to do it. Which is then why I make videos about them or criticize them despite, as I just said, not seeing it as real, grade A, genuine George Lucas Star Wars, as something different from that. Because I don't want people to misunderstand some of the things Lucas wanted Star Wars to be and represent. I don't want people to forget or not know what Star Wars is all about or what it originally was. I try to, I guess you could say, hold Disney accountable, and I try to be as fair as possible doing that to maintain some level of credibility, I suppose, even with my critics or those who don't like me. Also, when it comes to why I stick with Star Wars, and to be completely open and honest, not that it's any type of secret, but I do YouTube for a living. I essentially talk about Star Wars for a living. And I consider that an honor and a privilege that is afforded to me by the people who watch my videos, and thus I owe them the best I can be. I owe them good quality videos, the best I can make. I owe all of you integrity when it comes to reporting on Star Wars, and I try to be that in a community, the YouTube Star Wars community, that is certainly filled with a lot of people at the two extremes, right? Those who say nothing but good things about Star Wars all the time, and those who do nothing but bash it. And maybe the sad thing is, if I was firmly in one camp or the other, I'd probably have a larger audience. I honestly don't think being the one in the middle serves me very well when it comes to views, subscribers, and all of that. I think a lot of people, especially nowadays, they only want to hear what they want to hear, and they don't want to consider there may be two sides to a story, or that there may be more to a story than initially meets the eye, or that is being reported on by someone who is trying to pitch a certain narrative. And so yeah, I'd probably make more money if I did nothing but hate on Disney Star Wars in each and every video I do, which isn't to say I don't ever do that. I certainly have been very critical of them in plenty of my videos, and moments ago I explained why. But if I went all in on it, if every video I did was a rant against Disney Star Wars, yeah, I'd almost certainly get more views. But in this weird sort of way, I would feel like I was selling my soul. Because when it comes to Star Wars, what I want most is for it to get better or be the best it possibly can be. And if I was suddenly making a really good living off it being bad and remaining bad, well then I have a bit of a conflict of interest, don't I? If I'm getting quote-unquote rich off of bad Star Wars, why would I ever truly want it to get better? The same way if I was someone who only ever talked good about it and had amassed a huge following that way, what interest do I have in ever pointing out or acknowledging what's wrong with Star Wars? That's just something to keep in mind, let's say. In other words here, I have a lot of reasons why I keep watching Star Wars. Because, for one, I still enjoy some, if not most of it. And because, as odd as it may sound, or as full of myself as I may sound, I treat talking about Star Wars like a responsibility. Which isn't to say there's nothing that would ever break me or get me to say, yeah, I'm done with all this and just walk away from it. I just don't know what that line is. And if I wasn't doing YouTube, if I had never started this or found success doing it, I'm not exactly sure where the line would be for me. I don't know how I'd feel about Star Wars right now. Now, I'm not saying I'd have a different opinion, but I don't know that I would be anywhere near as vested in it as I am right now. I don't think I'd be keeping up with literally everything in the new canon like I do now. I think I'd be finding some other things to do with my free time. And so I'd probably be something closer to a casual fan at that point. Which actually brings us to this question from Zachary Fett, who asked, "Hey Thor, I wonder if it might be a good idea to address who the heck the casual fans are. Speaking about Ahsoka, if you're a casual fan who only watched The Mandalorian, you know who Ahsoka is. Likewise, if you only watched The Clone Wars or only watched Rebels. So when we talk about casual fans, who are we talking about?" Okay, so when I say casual fan or average viewer or hardcore fan, those are the three categories I seem to talk about. They're obviously very, very, very general terms. There's no hard definition for any of them, but if I had to try and define them, I'd say the average viewer is just that. They're someone who has likely seen Star Wars, might even say they like it or are a fan of it, but they don't keep up with virtually anything from it. They just enjoy the movies and shows when they suddenly pop up, and then they go about their life when they're gone. Casual fans then are those who keep up with it all maybe a bit more, but especially when something is going on, like when a show is going on or a movie just came out or is upcoming, they might watch some videos about it or be a bit more knowledgeable in general than most people are about Star Wars. But as soon as that's done and over with, they basically more or less check out till the next thing comes out. They're not watching Star Wars YouTube videos regularly, let's say. And I know this because I always, of course, no surprise, see a big spike in views whenever a show is going on or a movie has come out. Hardcore fans are the ones then who, shall we say, and to put it as simply as I can, they're actively trying to keep track of Star Wars all the time or close to all the time, even when nothing is going on or imminently coming out. Heck, I'd even say there's another level above that, the super fan, maybe you could call it, who lives and breathes Star Wars, who reads absolutely everything and knows the franchise inside and out. But again, these are general terms. Each fan experiences and keeps tabs on Star Wars differently. But basically, when I say casual fan, I'm simply referring to someone who doesn't follow it all that closely, but is still pretty knowledgeable and follows it, especially when it is in the spotlight, shall we say, during the release of a new show or movie. Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about anything and everything I had to say. Or give me your definition of a casual fan. You can also feel free to ask a question for a future lightning response video. Just start a comment off with "Hey Thor" and ask away. Whatever you choose to do, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.